Hey folks, Digger Does here. Welcome back to my channel. I had not planned on doing a video today, but some things were being said on Facebook about this Ukrainian situation that made me see that there was a lot of news being put out there that isn't true. Both our government and the news are either putting out misinformation or just not telling the truth at all. So I wanted to talk about that, and that's why I'm titling this video, "The News is Fake, the War is Real." So in order to see where we are, we need to go back a little bit to understand how we got here. And so I'm going to take you back through history because as a historian, an amateur historian, I feel that we can learn a lot by where we are in our present time by looking at our past. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from it. And so I think by going over a few things, you might get a better understanding of what's going on over there, as well as understand it well enough to do your own research, because I think that's what a lot of people need to do today, is dig into this themselves and see where the real news is coming from, because a lot of it that's been put out there here lately is a lot of boo-boo. So I'll try to get through this quickly because there is a lot I need to go through. So I apologize if this video takes too long. And before I jump into this, please turn off your TVs. Stop listening to the news, because you're being fed a lot of bull. I promise you are. Okay, so we're going to go back almost 400 years, back to the time of Tsar Peter the Great. In 1695, he began to look for a warm water seaport. And guess where that area just happened to be where a warm water seaport is? Bingo, you got it. The Ukraine. Especially the region of Crimea. And you're going to hear Crimea come up a lot, because it is a very important area. And he wanted it for two reasons. One, for trade, and two, for his navy. He was trying to establish a Russian navy. In order to do that, he had to go to war with Sweden and the Ottoman Empire, which he did and had some great success at it. So that's where it all begins, really. Now jump forward about 100, well, almost, let's say jump forward about almost 300 years to the time of 1853. You have the Crimean War. That was a war between France, Russia, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now, I'm not going to get in too heavy on the logistics of that war. If you want to know more about it, look it up yourself. The Crimean War was from 1853 to 1856. So you can look it up for yourself and read more about it. What's important about that war is that Russia lost their warm water seaport, and their navy was obliterated. So, that's where we're at within the Ukrainian area at that time. Is Crimea was a hotbed, and it still is for many reasons. All right. So now we're going to jump forward to about the time of the October Revolution, or the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russian Revolution, whatever you want to call it. The two key things here that I want to touch on with regards to the early Soviet era is that Ukrainians during that time were the ones who were exiled from the Ukraine. And Russian language and culture were being, I think, what was that? I don't have the year on here, but I have it on here that the Russian language and culture was being pushed in the Ukraine. Ukrainian nationalism was uh, being squashed, so to speak. So that was in the area of World War I, right before World War II. Now we get into about World War II to about the early 50s. I'm going to say there was a pact signed between the USSR and the Ukrainian SSR. The date is 1954. There was an agreement made where the Crimean area, known as Crimea Oblast, was handed back over to the Ukraine. Now, that agreement to this day is still a source of contention between Russia and the Ukraine. Still has lasting effects. Okay, now we're going to jump over to post-Soviet era. Now, in 1992, there was a Russian cultural center there I think it was in the capital city of Kiev, Ukraine. It was vandalized. Archives were destroyed. Russians were told that they could not reside there. That, the Ukrainian property was for Ukrainians only, so on and so forth. Well, that same cultural building was attacked in 2001, 2003 it was attacked 5 times. In 2004 it was attacked, in 2006. So already you could see that there was something starting to brew in the Ukraine. Now we get to 2013. 2013 and 2014 are going to be very crucial to what's going on now. So you need to pay attention to this part here. Now, you had something that was called the Euromaidan protest. Now, the Maidan is a town square within Kiev. You had protests starting over the fact that the president at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, was unwilling to sign an agreement between the EU and the Ukraine to join the EU. He was more in favor of a pact between Russia, known as the Eurasian Economic Union. And now, that sparked some protests because the Ukrainian people felt that they would do better with the EU. So that led to Yanukovych resigning, along with his what is known as the Second Azarov government. People were saying that there was corruption, abuse of power, so it was really, really starting to heat up. And there's some other players in this that'll factor in when we get to talking about the Revolution of Dignity, also called the Maidan Revolution. Here in the States, it's referred to as the Color Revolution. And there's a reason for that, okay? So, you had clashes between these protesters and the Berkut police, which is I guess you could call it the federal police there in the Ukraine. They may have been Russian as well. I forgot to go and double check that, but they are the guys to handle government business. Now, uh, these protesters were backed by a group called Davos. Now, the Davos group is funded by a man named George Soros. Remember that name? In 2012, he began funding these people and continued to fund them up to the revolution, and he may be still funding them to this day. I'm not sure about that. There's still some separatist groups there that supposedly are targeting Russia, ethnic Russians and Poles, and some say that that's why Putin is going into Ukraine. I don't believe that. I don't believe he's looking for a warm water seaport, because there's something that happens after this revolution that gives Putin the Crimea, the area of the Crimea. That he gets that in an annexation. So I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so not only are these protesters being backed by Davos, but they're backed by the Obama administration. That's right, Barack Obama. You have to keep in mind that his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, was involved in this as well. So you got some fingers in the cookie jar at that time that are still involved there today. Okay? So, these people were also backed by the CIA. And as a result, Yanukovych was forced out. A guy by the name of Petro Poroshenko was put in office. Okay, so are you starting to feel what's going on here? What it was, the Obama administration wanted a more favorable government in place. Okay, you following me here? Because there's some reasons for that. Okay, so the players that are still in, or the players that were there in 2014 are still there to this day. And even though the government is different and led by a different guy, the fingers that are in the cookie jar are still there. And there's even a few others, namely the children of Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. Now, let me say this about Mr. Biden. There's a video floating around on the internet right now where during the 2020 election, it came out, this video came out around that time, but I think it's from like 2015, 2016, maybe a little later than that, but he's bragging about a situation where Hunter Biden was being investigated over his involvement with a Russian company named Burisma. Burisma was an oil company that was a little on the corrupt side, you know. Well, Biden told this Poroshenko, I believe he was the president at the time, said, hey, look, if you want that $50 million that the United States has for you, you got to fire this guy that's investigating my son. So 30 minutes later, I think it is, in the video, he says in the video, he's like, I get a call back, they fired the guy. Okay, so he's another player here. And that's why Joe Biden will not talk about Hunter's involvement with Burisma or anything else that's going on over there in the Ukraine. And that's why our leaders And several other leaders around the world don't want people poking in and learning about what's really going on over there because they don't want you learning about their involvement. Okay, so there's some things about the Ukraine, some statistics I wanted to give on the Ukraine to kind of put in perspective why these people have their hands in the cookie jar per se. And before I go to that, the whole idea of the warm water seaport, nix that, because I'll tell you why. After this revolution, um, there was a war called the War of Donbass or something like that. And you can look it up. You know, I don't want to get into all the things about that war, but what is most important about that war is Putin was allowed to annex the Crimean area. So he got his warm water seaport. Okay, so that whole idea of him going after a warm water seaport, that's nixed. The whole idea of Russian, ethnic Russians being attacked and, killed or whatever, there may be some truth to that, but I don't think that's entirely the reason. I think the real reason is because of the players that are still involved in the Ukraine. And also, you got, and this is something I read about the other day, you got Afghani refugees pouring into the Ukraine. Now, back in '79, the Soviet government was involved in a war with Afghanistan. Many of the same terrorists that they were fighting then are still involved in Afghanistan today. The same terrorists we're fighting now are the same guys that they was fighting back in '79. So Putin knows who these guys are that are flowing into the Ukraine, and he don't want them in his country. So he's trying to cut the head off the snake, if you know what I mean. But let me read these statistics that might show you there's something more to what's going on. By the way, they're playing this up and misinforming you about it because they don't want you knowing what they're doing. Okay? So, where's my statistics here? Okay. So, the Ukraine is very important for many reasons. One, it's a very agricultural area. They are some of the largest producers of barley, wheat, corn, cheese, just to name a few. Also, their natural resources are very important because, for one, they mine uranium ore. What is uranium ore needed for? Nuclear weapons, nuclear energy. Okay? They are also one of the largest builders of nuclear turbines. Keep that in mind. Okay? They also are one of the largest producers of ammonia and natural gas. So, it's a very important region. In fact, the Ukraine I've heard referred to as, I believe that it's called the breadbasket of Europe. So that just tells you how important it is. And lastly, and this is something that you really need to think about when it comes to this area, two things. One of the largest human trafficking rings is found in the Ukraine. And second of all, one of the largest money laundering organizations, in fact, it's the number one money laundering organization, is in the Ukraine. And it was backed by, guess who? Clinton and Obama. So there's some things you might want to think about before you start spouting off about Ukraine, and go do your homework. Turn that TV off. Go do your homework and just look into some of these things. And I'm telling you, the things that are going on aren't quite what they seem to be. And they're trying to keep you from finding out about it. So just do your homework. And before I close out, to do your homework, don't do it on well-known search sites, because some of them are actually censoring the information. So, keep your head on a swivel when you start looking into this stuff, because you could be easily misled like I was at the very beginning of this. As an amateur historian and a genealogist, I believe in fact. The truth is rooted in fact, and you can't change the truth. It's always going to be what it is, fact. And a lot of these people that are telling you about this are double talking. They're saying one thing and then saying another thing, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, do your own homework, and you'll be really surprised at what you find out, because it'll also lead you down the rabbit hole on some other things. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a truth seeker. And the more homework I do, the more truth that I've found. So folks, I hope you find this enlightening. Again, sorry if it runs long. This is Duger Daz saying do good and deuces.